Morning. Pascal, Carter, Ravel, Steve-O, everybody, Doug, Kian. How are you guys, Dave? Good morning. Gold was nice yesterday. Probably something I'll repeat here in a moment, but thought gold stood out pretty well. You noticed. I did. I removed the treadmill and we put it where it belongs with the rest of the workout equipment in the house. I've got a Peloton and like some Bowflex weights and all that stuff, but for some godforsaken reason, when I got the house, I was like, yeah, let's put the treadmill in my office. I'll use it. So never used it. And then I put up a feature wall and moved I had like a million pieces of Lovesac floating around the house. So I was like, all right, put a couch in the room, put a feature wall in, and yeah, Tesla looks fine. Yeah, Tesla, like a million other charts right now, need digestion. So, I'm kind of on the do less mode right now. A lot of stocks that I'd like to own, we're talking like names like SE, Rubric, and many others. I mean, the list goes on and on, right? They all look like the Z-scaler, right? They're just going vertical and they need a little bit of digestion. I think that would be completely healthy. I'm hoping that hood gives us like a little 3-week tight setup just underneath the all-time high breakout. I mean, otherwise, names look great. They just need a little pause. You're in from 300. I'm in from 292, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken. I'll tell you right now, 292.83. So I bought it just as it was breaking back up above the 200. CDE Core Mining, I know them well. Very nice. Yeah, so this is a silver name, and silver looks pretty damn good. Yeah, super nice. I don't know why this one didn't hit my radar for some reason. Don't know why Core didn't hit my radar. But Core, yeah, Heckler acts like crap. PAAS, not nearly as nice. I'm in KGC, and I bought KGC right at the 50 a few days ago. I bought this thing 515, and then I was using the 50 simple as my guide. So I was red for a moment, right? 1362. A lot of guys in the room bought it as well when I mentioned it, and then gapped down on us just a little bit, but held the 50 really well, and then just kind of started moving higher from there right away. And you can see the 50 simple down here. So price held really well, kept going, gapped up overnight, and just held. What I liked yesterday was the pickup in volume. And then obviously we've got a really small gap up going on right now overnight. Really nothing crazy. Gold slightly pulling back here, even though it's still green on the day. But yeah, these gold miners, whether GDX had a nice little pickup in volume back through the 10 and the 20. My favorite is OR. It's just a little too thin for me, but this OR was very nice. I think, like I mentioned, I think core, they do both, I want to say, gold and silver mining. Archer not looking so nice anymore. Well, Culper issued a short report on them. So, but here's the reality. If you bought this thing properly in the 9s, and then you get a 40% move, almost 50% move in 4 days, you should be out of half of your position, right? You should be out of half. So no matter what happens, you've already locked up a half, likely into this $13+ range. That's what should have happened. And at this point, now you would just be trailing the ascending 10. So really, trade's done. Yeah, the treadmill. I wasn't using it to dry clothes, but it was just collecting dust in here, right? It was like I needed it next to the other equipment in the house. And, there would be some mornings where I would, actually keep the futures markets up and I would be walking on the treadmill. And, but, if I go work out, it's at the gym. So treadmill is officially out of the office. And it's nice because the panels behind me, they're sound dampening. So, even when I'm talking right now, I can kind of hear it's a little bit more muted in here, which is nice. Less of an echo and less things to collect dust in the room. Very nice. Yeah, if you're in Zscaler, I was watching this thing over 217, but this thing had such a nasty shakeout and then right back up to 217 that I was like, let me just see if it'll give me like one inside day or a little pullback as volume would dry up. But then nope, it gapped above and then just never stopped. Right, very annoying that it never let me in, but I wanted a little bit less risk. And this thing decided that it was just going to effectively it was going to go up 30% into supply and then break supply and then go up another 20, effectively. So pretty annoying. But there's nothing I can do about that. Yeah, crowd looks good. Crowd looks like a cup and handle, but PanW just reported earnings. And obviously this thing is gapping down 5 points. So not like, it's a big gap down in any kind of way. But, at this point, sideways for too long is not so great. I'm in at 400. I'm going to need to see it kind of hold this 20 or I'm going to have to trim some off, even though I held through this pullback. I don't know that I'm willing to hold through it again. We'll see. Yeah, lots of good sideways now. But there are several names that are slightly vertical, and I'm kind of hoping that the market weakens just a little bit because it'll help us determine who are the best stocks for the next potential run. And again, names like Zscaler, Rubrik, SE, even Tesla, NVIDIA, AVGO, Palantir, Hood, Uber. These names all look awesome, but, they could use a little bit of a breather, and I'm in several of these. So, it'll suck giving back some unrealized gains, but, that's just what happens when you are trailing ascending moving averages, right? But I am trimmed. That's the key part. The only name I'm not trimmed on is CLS and Tesla. What are my thoughts on team? Nothing. It's just building sideways. I don't think anything special of it just yet. Trying to buy it yesterday was, a touch much in my opinion. I kind of made the mistake yesterday too. I was like, all right, I'm not going to buy anything. Then I noticed the strength in Bitcoin and I'm like, all right, I'm going to try some MSTR. And I tried some MSTR over prior day high and it literally washes out to low of day. So I'm like, all right, I took my stop, right? 11K later. So I take my little loss and then the thing V-shape recovers right back into highs. I was like, you got to be shitting me. So that's MSTR for you. And then I also tried HSAI and Rocket Lab. And again, very, very small position. So for all three, about 15% of my account. So super small in terms of each individual position. So no big deal. And I kind of knew better. Like I knew I shouldn't be buying too many breakouts yesterday because I've been under the impression for literally the last 7 or 8 days that the market needs a breather. Right. And I haven't been able to gain much traction in new longs. And when I just tell myself that I should be patient, I end up trying a couple longs. So I'm still in HSAI and I'm still in Rocket Lab, but it looks like, another 30 cents for Rocket Lab. I'll be stopped out. HSAI has a bit more wiggle room. Well, you know what, King? The reality is, in terms of my situational awareness for today, is that futures markets are gapping down. I don't want to buy weakness. I want to buy things as they turn back up. So, and it's not even that. It's just that names need to go, names need to go sideways. Names need to build out longer bases. That's the reality. I don't want to be doom and gloom about it, but that's just what names need. Like names need, and it's not even just names, should I say. It's the best names in the market. The best names in the market need a breather. Your Microsofts and your NVIDIAs. Yeah, I mean, Bros was kind of nasty. And you know what else was kind of nasty? So was Shopify. I really wouldn't use the word nasty, but again, the market wasn't friendly. It was pulling back. So, and it just needs to breathe, right? When you think about like the NQ for a moment, right? This is a hell of a move, right? We're talking 30% move in 30 days. So a month and a half of trading. What about Pony? Same deal with Pony, right? This thing had earnings. Earnings weren't special. And when earnings aren't special in this market, you do nothing. Now, does this just continue to build sideways and let the 50 catch up and then maybe it's buyable later? It could be. Right? But it tried to go on so-so earnings and then just failed. But really, I mean, this has been a superb move, right? You're talking about from 4 to 20. This is a 500% move in a very short amount of time, 400% move basically from the day it took off. I don't know that Palantir's ready to go just yet, right? It needs more sideways. mean, guys, remember, this thing went up 101% in 27 trading days. And it's not like Palantir has some small float. To make this thing move 100% in that short of time, it's quite a bit, honestly. So there's nothing wrong with Palantir just chopping around, pulling back into the 20, maybe undercutting the 20, going sideways for another 10 days. I think that would be best. Hey man, if leaders lead, am I looking at something like Netflix to make the first move as an indicator the market may follow? Conversely, if it started breaking down, would that be a sign that the market may be ready to turn bearish? Also, I don't want to use the word bearish because the market does look really good and stocks are holding up really well, right? I just think that the market needs a little bit more digestion is all. That's my personal opinion. So that the market just needs to digest a little bit longer, right? You got massive moves in names like Netflix, again, SE, Zscaler, Rubrik, Okta. I mean, you name it. Names out here have been friggin' awesome. NVIDIA up 30% off the lows. You're talking $1 trillion of market cap. So, AVGO, Melly, HIMS, Palantir. I mean, guys, it's been friggin' awesome out here. Hood, Uber has been unbelievable. So, it won't just be Netflix because Netflix, was one of the leaders. It's look at all of them and then ask yourself, what is before they can really go higher, what do they have to do next? And in my opinion, they have to digest a little. That's all. Here's the thing. I was talking to a student yesterday, and so I have guys, that I work with, and they're in the room, and some of them have had in the last 6 weeks, 35%, 40% months, 20% months, 15% months. And then I spoke with a student yesterday, and he's had a 6% month. And he's just like, I've executed poorly. I've taken lots of paper cuts. I haven't sized things up. I don't even have close to all my money invested. And then he's just like, I'm only up 6% on the month. And I said, you're downplaying how good 6%. And by the way, I've traded like crap. I'm not fully invested. I've taken too many paper cuts. But he did say some positives. My average loser is way down in terms of percentage on the portfolio. But he's up 6%. And then to which I said, you're downplaying how good 6% really is, because if you average 6% per month as a return, you've made 100% on the year, right? It's like, I know nobody believes that math, but that's what the math is. If you compound and do 6% every single month, right? With compounding, you end up doing 100% year. Yes, watching some of your peers be up 20 and 30 and 50 and 80, whatever, like I know some people up a ridiculous amount this month, trading massive size, whatever. But if you're watching some of your peers be up 25 and 30% on the month and you're up 6, right? It could feel a little bit frustrating, like you've underperformed. But one thing to remember is never, ever compare yourself to what the next guy's doing, because I know guys who are up 40%, right? But I'm up, less than 10, but in terms of dollar amount, it might be 10 times the amount, right? So you don't know how big someone's portfolio might be. But my point is that you need to focus on the percentage gain more than anything. So, as a swing trader, I'm right, during a really good period, 50% of the time, like all throughout, mids through, pretty much the mid of April up until about, I don't know, a week ago, of like my last 10 trades, I was probably like 7 for 10 or something, 6 for 10, call it something like that. Maybe if I had a few more, right, I'd have to look at all my trades. So recently I've had trades like, I did stop on MSTR yesterday, but I've had trades like KGC, CLS. I took a loss on HSAI. I've had Toast, Tesla. I took 2 very small losses in Soxel and Amazon, which I didn't even follow my rules. We talked about that already. Baba, which was a winner. Hood, I stopped myself out, so it was a loss, even though it should be a very frustrating, huge winner right now. Spotify, NVIDIA, Baba again, 1 win, 1 loss. CrowdStrike win, Uber win, Palantir win, Netflix win, CrowdStrike win, GRR short is a win, and then covered up some recent shorts in like now SMCI, MU, so AVGO. So I've had some, it's been pretty good trading, on my part. So yeah, if you did 15% per quarter, what's my year-to-date performance? I'm up close to 20%, short and long. But, that's enough money to last me a lifetime. It's about $4 million. So it's more than I need. But yeah, and that's also part of the problem too. As your portfolio scales, right? For some people, it's easier to have a bigger percent gain. Like I'm much more, I size things way down now, right? I'm much more, how do I say it? Like kind of passive on my not investing, but like I'm much more mellow, about my investing. I don't really take massive swings anymore. I'm not in the grow your portfolio as fast as you can mode, right? If I do 40, 50, 60, 70% in a year, I mean, up to 100% in a year, it's been an awesome year. So, but as your account gets bigger, that's hard to do, right? It's hard to do. I don't trade options, shares only. So it's been a 20% year, roughly. A little bit more. But yeah, it gets more difficult, honestly. Because I love it, Stocky Pits. We know what they say? Golf is only fun until you have to play it 5 days a week. What else would I do? 1, it's not about the money. 2, I've only been doing this career for just over 5 years. I don't know what else I would do with my life. I'm only 34 and I don't have kids. And, I'm about to be married, hopefully in the next, 10 months. And then, we're going to have a kid. So I'll let you know when the kid's here, and then I will see how I feel once I have a child. But I mean, what else are you supposed to do with life, man? What are my thoughts on market sector rotation? How can we use it in our trading? Well, I don't know exactly what you mean, Jas, but really one of the things you always want to do is when I'm scanning, I always want to figure out where money is going. Where's money going? Where's money leaving? Right? So, if money rotates, it'll show up in the top 40 groups. So I don't really think about money rotating or market sector rotation, right? That shows up on its own in your scans. So when I sit down every single evening and I'm going through the market and I'm like, okay, what stocks look good? What stocks look bad? Okay, wow, this stock looks pretty damn good. What group's it in? Okay, it's aerospace and defense. And I'm looking at KTOS. And then I'm looking at another one, DRS. And you're like, oh, aerospace and defense. And MRCY, oh, yep, aerospace and defense. And HWM, another aerospace. And it's like, as I'm scanning, these stocks are coming up. Right. And all of a sudden, you look at it, it's an industry group number 4, and you don't have to think too much more about it. You just have to execute the nice setup when you see it. So I don't ever really think too much about where's money going next. I let my scans do that for me. And if stocks are in top 40 groups and then they have good earnings and sales, that's all I really care about. Everything else is secondary in my opinion. So first, what setups are appearing on your nightly scan, and that's it, really. What setups are appearing on your nightly scan. That's the most important part. And then are those stocks in a similar group? Johnny, you got to watch my interview, brother. I've said it in a bunch of them. I started in 2020 with 30,000, and I probably got off to the hottest start of any trading career on earth. I did 30,000 into 3.5 million in the first 16 months of my career. So, and it's fully audited for the non-believers. And it even got me kicked off my brokerage with Thinkorswim at the time. Even got me kicked off that brokerage. I've told the story a lot and how I traded. I started as a day trader. So it's good to maybe for everybody to, if you guys aren't familiar too much with my background story, kind of take a look at that interview. Oh man, how much percent account was that? Were I risking per trade? I wasn't even really thinking about that, Charles. My head wasn't even there, right? I was just thinking, scalp, right? It didn't even, there were periods in my career where, I was having, 50, 60 straight green days in a row, and all those green days got bigger and bigger and bigger, where I went from making, $10,000, $12,000 a day to making, $20,000, $30,000 a day to, having 6-figure days. And it got nuts in 20 and into 21, the ends of 20. Really, at the end of 20, my account was still kind of small, right? I made $90,000 in 20, and then I went into 21 with exactly. I took money out of my portfolio just to have some money. And then I started 21 with exactly $100,000, and I ran it to 3 million in less than 6 months. Steve, there were no real emotions, man, because things were just going nuts, and I was just scalping with bigger size. I was just literally doing the exact same thing I was already doing before, the only thing I knew how to do. And the market was very, very friendly. Here's the thing that I tell people now, don't look at my past performance and think that I still want to trade like that, or that it's even conducive to trade like that, or that we even have a market to trade like that. Why did I quit day trading? Scalability, man. Scalability. Right? That we did first, it's scalability, and 2, the market changed. Right? Ends of 21, there weren't sympathy plays. I would go to my, my morning routine, and I would look at the gap up scanner, and there were stocks up 20% compared to in 20 and 21. I'd look at my gap up scanner and stocks were up 250%, right? For those of us who traded in 20 and 21, I'm sure you guys remember SPI. It went from $1 to 46. Well, one of my biggest trades at the time was buying pretty much my entire portfolio into Sun W, right? And I remember I had like $100,000 account, and I bought like 80,000 shares of Sun W at like 90-cent average, 92-cent average. In the same day, it went to 4. It literally went to $4. So it's like you're making $3 a share, and it was like I was peeling out on the way up, but it was like a $200,000 trade on like a small account at the time. So if you guys remember SPI, that was just wild. And it wasn't just SPI. It was like, you had names like, I've told the story before, like when the NFTs were running, and you had like TCAT going, right? I was just, whenever TCAT would start moving, I would just start punching in DLPN, and I'd start punching in with, 30, 40,000 shares, and the thing would move, 50 cents within 2-3 minutes. And it's like, so, you're just making $20,000 in a couple of minutes. And then I was just market selling out because Thinkorswim, they provided what was called midpoint fills, midpoint liquidity. So I wouldn't knock down price, selling out, 2, 3, 4,000 shares at a time on the market. They would fill me between the bid and the ask. So, they weren't too happy about that. And that's eventually why I got the boot. But I've talked about this before. They didn't appreciate me doing that. So, and same thing when I was marketing in. I did have a little bit of problems of managing emotions because I felt like a know-it-all, and I felt like, the market was going to reward that kind of trading forever. And the reality is it didn't, right? It's like like a lot of other people at the ends of 21 started to struggle a little bit. And then into 22, what I was doing before didn't work because I was on a new broker, and I had to slow myself way down in 22 and try to figure out what the hell was going on. So, I started learning from guys like Dan Zanger and Minervini and Christian Koulamagi and, Pat Walker and, Gil Morales on the short side, and even Nate from IU on the short side. And, just like really started to piece together, like, what is it that the guys with, 10, 15, 20 years of experience do well that I don't? And just slow myself down. And then once I was like, a swing trader in 22, I did well on the energy trade, which came up, January 3rd of 22. I remember it like it was yesterday. But then, the rest of 22, everything else was like a failed breakout. So it wasn't until the end of 22 when I was like, all right, I caught some traction on NVIDIA, and then that led me to, other names. And I was like, okay, this feels right. Started 23 and, did really, really well in 23, did even better in 24, and, doing awesome in 25. And at this point, even during down periods, I was doing well because at this point I was a competent short seller as well. So it was doing it basically the exact same thing on the long side as I was the short. They're just setups at this point is the way I look at them. Yeah, Marco, definitely figured out like I figured out a cheat code. Oh, you thought you were a pimp trying to day trade SPI? Had it at 345 to 4. I mean, that's a nice move. But Evan, you should have been on Sun W. That was the one. If you looked at and I learned sympathy trading from Cam the Man, my original mentor, and some people in this room might actually know who he is. He was an awesome day trader, and that's who I learned from. That's who I look. AMR, I mean, ALAB looks pretty good. When I see a high volume close like that, I wouldn't call this a high volume close. It higher than the prior day, that's good, but I'm not going to call that a high volume close. And not to mention, this thing moves 6% per day. and it's up 36% from the 50. So, I saw guys trying to buy this thing yesterday. When it's up 30% from the 50, that's too extended, right? Like, I wouldn't buy this thing if it was more than 24% away from the 50. Right? I don't like to buy stocks more than 4 times their ATR from the 50. Thoughts on AMER? Terrible. What is this thing? Huh? AMER. I know you got to be. This is a joke, right? You teasing me, Jess? Don't make me pull shit like this up. That's trash. Yeah. It's terrible. I know. It's horrible. You're forgiven, my friend. Oh, Marco, did you see the video? Oh my God, I was being live streamed when this happened. And I was watching this thing, the group pulled it up like right here. And then I was like, what? All right, what do they do? So I go on FinViz, I click on their website. Oh my God, I had no clue this was for the boys. Oh, yes. I mean, it looks like a nice high type flag, man. This thing looks good. I just, almost out of principle, I can't buy this thing, right? I just can't do it. But nice pullback. Found some support at the rising 20. Broke out of a base recently. A big, nice, I don't even want to say it. A big, nice, long base, right? It's, but no, I can't do it, man. I can't do it. I won't do it. I'd rather be left behind. No, LEU looks good. LEU looks really good. It needs a little bit more, but this is starting to look pretty damn constructive. And CCJ, I think, is also starting to go too. Right? Nice move up. Just got back up above the 200, flagging up nicely here. 18%. Yeah, they're still a touch extended from the 50, but this is starting to look good. Starting to look much better. And it's not just this one. I noticed MOS yesterday. Look at this thing. Holy guys, stock, like, only institutions make stock do this. If anybody's not familiar with Dave Ryan, he's a 2-time investing champion. And this is like the ants indicator. Yeah, I'm looking at XPEV now, and it's coming right back up to, this 21 level that I had marked out, right? If you just zoom out a little bit, you'll see how relevant that $21 level is. I love how this thing tightened up. I mean, just look at that thing, right? Tightened up really, really nicely. right? Pressing right up against 21. I mean, it's very nice. It's a nice technical pattern. It's got to get going over 21 ideally. If it can do that, it looks pretty good. Baba's another one that's interesting, right? Trying to reclaim the 50 simple, 124.86. So we're just above it now. So we'll see, like maybe a 50 simple moving average undercut and rally. Yeah, I think coin flagging looks just fine. Just needs a little bit longer, right? Again, this thing moves 6% per day, and we are up 35% effectively. If you were to buy it over yesterday's highs, you'd be buying it up, 6 times its average daily range from the 50. It's just too extended for me. And I'm hoping that market weakness causes everything to pull in. Say a prayer. I want things to pull in. Even though I've got a bunch of longs open, I need them to pull in. No, you see, the thing is like I can trade the Chinese equities. I have no problem doing it. Obviously, they gap quite a bit, in either direction. But the reality is whenever you buy it, you have to make sure that you have some cushion on it by day end, right? That you have to have some cushion on it to hold it overnight. They're definitely choppy, but when you think about XPEV and you just zoom out and say, what's the overall trend on this thing for the last, I don't know. It seems like 7-8 months. The trend really flipped above the 200 back in September, October. And then it broke out of this, what was a clean little base, and then doubled and then pulled back. And now it's creating another nice clean technical level. And again, I like XPEV personally. I think that, they're a neat business because they do EVs, they do humanoids, they do all sorts of stuff. Yeah, I actually had this one on last night's watch list video, BCRX. But I also mentioned that it reminds me a little bit of that, was it PRCH? A little bit of that PRCH. That was the problem, right? But obviously, BCRX could go, but similar thoughts to BCRX as PRCH. Like sometimes too much sideways isn't good, right? You compare like this gap up and then the high volume close to something that like you got in Dave and Sezzle, and right, you get the gap up and you get the high volume close, and then you get immediate follow through, right? You get Sezzle, you get the gap up, the high volume close, and immediate follow through, right? You get Oddity, the gap up, the high volume close, and immediate follow through, right? You get, and we can go down the list, right? NRG, same thing, gap up, high volume close, immediate follow through. So like PRCH, BCRX, they're like these more, I think they're like one's medical devices or something, and the other one's some biotech. So, they're a different group, and obviously you get what you get when you're in those groups. But AS, oh yeah, I saw Chris Camillo talk about that. AS, yeah. So you get a gap up, high volume close, and do you get the follow through? What are my thoughts on, isn't ALK Alaska Airline? BPMC. I mean, it just got above the 200 again. Nothing really special there yet. ALK, nothing special either. You know, just got above the 200, right? Give it time to set up. I mean, this thing just went through a big drawdown, right? Just trying to get back above the 200. Let it set up. Yeah, I still like Shopify, but it needs to break that prior high that it just built. This little flat base here, right? 111, 112 is the area I'll be watching. Until then, I don't really like this big pickup in volume. You know, let the 50 catch up, let things tighten up. And when it takes out, you know, 112, Shopify looks much better. Yeah, it's still, so the high volume close is still a buy point. And don't take your eyes off of it just because it doesn't trigger the next day. In fact, now this one ended up failing, you know, a few weeks later, but it still gave you a really nice move, right? So here was a great example of that. So you get, you know, this little grind up for Palantir, then you get this nice gap up, right? From 85 all the way to 100 and change, right? So 103.83 is your high volume close. The very next day it doesn't go, right? But the day after it triggers. So there's your buy, 103.83, stop at low of day, you know, call it $100. You know exactly your stop loss. It's 4% or $4, which is roughly, in terms of percent, you know, a 4% loss on a 10% position. You're risking like 0.5% of your portfolio. And then you get this, you know, this nice 23, 24% move. And you should have already had some trimmed out into this. And then this Pentagon news should have gotten you out of the rest. So would have been a nice win if you took Palantir using that high volume close setup. So they don't always go right away. They don't always go right away, but they're good setups to remember. Right? Scotland's somebody else on X. Big respect for him too. He talks about them as like they're called fishhook setups. But yeah, the delay, and then even if you guys are familiar with Pradeep's been talking about them as delayed reactions as well, that they're even safer to get into. They're even easier to trade. So guys, just another minute or so for me, and I got to get myself ready for the Discord and the room. Live streaming on there as well. Thank you guys. I appreciate you guys a ton for being here every morning, seemingly 2,000 people, which is super humbling. Love talking to you guys. Love chatting with you guys. Thank you for those of you guys who rush in here in the morning to beat each other to say good morning. You guys are awesome. Doug, you're one of them, man. Thank you. Doug, Gian, you guys know who you guys are. Appreciate you guys a ton for showing up every day. Mississippi Trader. Man, you know you're allowed to say something. I know you always say something at the end. You know you're allowed to say something in the beginning too, man. I always see you. Steve-O, thank you. Stonky Pits, you're awesome, man. Victor, appreciate you guys. MW, you're awesome. Rafael, thank you. I will see you guys in 23 hours, 7:30 in the morning. Same time as always, guys. Appreciate you guys, and we'll see you. You Swingman, check my X page. We'll talk to you.